correct or best way to approach these things. It's just, hey, what serves you here, and for me, sometimes the experiences earlier, or whatever experiences you've had within the plant medicine world, it then allows you and it enables you to go to the same place, to go to the same depth of your relationship with yourself through other means, like you're saying, just through meditation, just through the sound bath, um, and and yet for each person, for each of us to know with our own discernment what's right for us.
Hmm.
And so now that it's 1:30 here, I guess technically we can technically begin. I guess I'm live here, and um, so so welcome everyone, and welcome to those of you that have joined me in person here, as well as those that may be listening on the recording at some point. Um, um, I'm going to be sharing a lot of information here with you today. My name is John Germain Leto, and just a little bit about me, so you can understand who's giving you this information. This information on microdosing, this information on how they can be really potent allies in the journey of consciousness and the journey that we're each on here on this planet right now. It is no secret that we are in a time of immense change, immense disruption, where more than ever I feel people's shadow is in their face. And and that's why I'm so grateful for my experience with the plants. I'm so grateful for my experience in these areas. Um, and so let me share a little bit with you guys here today. So just a little bit about myself first. Um, I I've been both a life and business coach for over 18 years now, as well as a shamanic practitioner for the last, well, 2009, so that is 11 years. I've been a shamanic practitioner as well. Completed a really intense 3-year training program with the Four Winds Society about a decade ago, and then um, and then integrating the information and the ways of the energetic into the coaching practice that I've had, as I mentioned, for 18 years, and and then soon in my shamanic journey, my trips to Peru, the plant started calling. And so I've explored quite a bit in the realm of what they can do for me. My ayahuasca journeys down in the Amazon jungle, my time with San Pedro, the cactus from Peru, down in the Sacred Valley. Um, and so for about the last 10 years now, I've been also holding space for people in places like Peru and Costa Rica, where there are no issues with the legality. So all the medicine experiences I do are in those places. Let me just say that right up front. Right up front too, I'm a very big believer of the Paul Stamets way, which is I don't supply people with any kind of psychedelics. I don't need to. Mother Earth does that, and so um, and so today is really just about some information. It's about some education, some of how to use these powerful plants and allies. Some of the psychedelics, the psilocybin mushroom, the other plants in a microdosing way. That's the emphasis of this talk here today that I've been invited to do by OC Yoga Fest. And so I want to just share some things of what I've discovered and what I've learned. I have, literally facilitated hundreds of both private and group ceremonies with medicines. I've overseen microdosing programs for many, many, many people, and I've learned a lot. I continue to learn so much about the benefits of these experiences, and also the different ways of applying the different experiences. And so, um, from where I sit and the things that I get to do, there's just a lot of ground I guess I've covered in my own experience with these things. And it's from that place that I want to share a little bit of my knowledge, a little bit of my experience with each of you guys today. But I'm really quick also to point out that for me, there is no one correct or best way to microdose. There's no one correct or best way to have a full plant medicine ceremony. For me, there's only tendencies. Tendencies of what works for others. But I feel really strongly that when you're talking about developing a relationship with the plants, and even I even hesitate to call it plant because the mushroom kingdom is not a plant. It is an entire kingdom unto itself. It's not really an animal, not really a plant. It's a different thing. And um, and for the sake of the talk here today, most of the microdosing information will be based on microdosing. While I was mentioning to Carrie here earlier while we're waiting to start, you can microdose any plant, anything, and I'm going to explain what I mean when I say microdose in just a minute here. But most of the information that I'm going to be talking about is going to be directed towards the psilocybin mushroom. I feel like the sacred mushroom is a really wonderful substance to microdose because of its connective properties. For me, what happens anytime someone takes a leap forward into their consciousness, and that can be done in many different ways. Of course, it can be done in a full-blown proper plant medicine ceremony, and neurogenesis occurs. New neural pathways get formed when anybody does a plant medicine ceremony, a full ceremony with a full dose. To me, that's the reason why those experiences have been likened to several years of therapy in just one night, because it's the way it makes sense. Well, if new neural pathways are being formed, that's the way people can have so many insights and have a taste of the new they'd like to move towards in their lives. And so for me, when someone is microdosing, what it's really about is reinforcing the new neural pathways that have been developed in either that ceremony or with a 10-day Vipassana or from some kind of intense sound bath or some kind of other healing modality. You can microdose any opening that you've had on your journey. You could go for a hike and have some epiphany about your life, and you can microdose literally to reinforce that. And so I'm using this term called microdosing. Let me define that for you so you can really be on the same page with me. What I mean when I say microdosing, it's taking a sub-perceptual amount of medicine on a consistent daily basis. There are many different schools of thought and philosophies around the exact microdosing protocol, and I'm going to share several of them with you here today. Again, there's no one correct way or best way. I'll share with you my typical recommendation, but there are many schools of thought around it, okay? But it's taking basically a very tiny amount of medicine, very tiny, sub-perceptual. Let me explain what I mean when I say that word. Meaning it's not that it's non-perceptual, it's not that you're not sensing anything when you take the medicine. It is a sub-perceptual dose, meaning it works with not your conscious mind, but your subconscious mind. That's why it has to be a tiny little minuscule amount. That's why the micro needs to be a micro dose. Because what it's all about for me, and people are using this and having amazing benefits to microdosing, regardless of how they're doing it. That's the thing. The substances have their own intelligence unto themselves, and there are many, many beneficial things about microdosing. Some of the typical tendencies of what people report when they're on a microdosing program is they just have this sense of being a little bit more unbothered by life. It actually helps them, the typical things that people say, well, they've really heightened their own creativity and their access to their creativity. They seem to also have a measure of ease and flow and contentment, more access to that in their own lives, as well as an increase in productivity for themselves. And so that's the reason why this is being written up left, right, and center. Microdosing has been in just about every single newspaper, every magazine, from Silicon Valley programmers that are looking to get an edge, to artists, to writers, to really people from all walks of life are employing this tool. And that's what it is. It's a tool on the journey of consciousness. That's what it is for me. And so when someone's microdosing, and again, today, guys, I'm just flowing with you guys. I have notes, but I'm not going to refer to those. So I'm just kind of bounce around and just talk to you guys, just give you guys the straight kind of deal of my experience with these things. So if I'm believe me, I may go down a tangent or two, but I'll always come back for the most part. But if you have any questions, just type them in the box to me. Hi, thank you for joining me. I'm really appreciative. Otherwise, it'd be me talking to me here. And so thank you for joining me here today. And if you have specific questions around microdosing, around plant medicines, I've got so much information that I can convey. But if there's anything specific that's on your mind around how this practice could potentially benefit you, feel free to just go ahead and type it in that chat feature, or raise your hand and unmute yourself. Okay. But let me keep going here a little bit about microdosing and what it really is here, and what are the ways that you can potentially employ this in your life. So for me, you really can't talk about microdosing, which is again the subperceptual dose, okay, of any medicine. And what I mean by on a regular basis, I mean like the typical structure I tend to recommend is like 4 days on of the medicine and then 3 days off, and 3 weeks on and then 1 week off. The reason for that is your body is always seeking homeostasis. It's always seeking to come into balance and find its equilibrium again. And so part of what you're doing, you're microdosing, and the way that I approach everything in life is kind of from both the pragmatic as well as the mythic. For whatever reason, there's the coach part of me that likes things to make sense. And there's certain things that I recommend in microdosing, like measuring out like your exact dosage, getting a proper scale, measuring it out to the thousandths of a decimal point so you know exactly what you're doing. There's things like that I recommend people do. There's a highly practical and pragmatic aspect of me. And then there's this, the mythic, the level of the energetic, what I do as a shamanic practitioner now on a daily basis for over, as I mentioned, for over a decade here. I'll just say a little bit more about that just so you can know, I didn't just take some weekend course or something. I've really spent time with several different indigenous tribes around the globe. I've been initiated into the ways of the Q'ero, that tribe from the high Andes of Peru. I've spent a lot of time with them as some dear, dear soul brothers and sisters that are a part of that lineage that is very dear to me. In addition to that, I've also spent time with the Kogi, the indigenous tribe from Colombia, and that's been super meaningful as well as time with the Blackfoot up in near Calgary, in the First Nations there in Canada. And so some wonderful First Nations ways that I make as a blend, if you will, of my own medicine and consciousness journey. And I bring both. I bring my listening ability and my coaching ability to people, and the education of what I do, and also the mythic as well. Because I feel like what the plants are really doing is, for me, whether it's in a microdosing setting or in a full plant medicine setting, the plants all really do 3 primary things. Let me share those with you right now. The first thing that they do is they thin the veil. They thin the veil between ourselves and the world of spirit. I was talking to Carrie here before the talk began, and she was saying, well, I can get to the same places just by meditating or just with a sound bath. And I'm like, cool, great, awesome. And that's the thing. It's all about what is your relationship like with your internal world. What is your relationship like with spirit, with your own subconscious, with your own internal landscape? Whatever metaphor you want to use, it points to something that is bigger than just relating to ourselves. It's just the literal level of this bag of skin and bones, and a mind that likes to bounce back and forth and hem and haw about things. We're more than those things. We have a greater emotional sense, and beyond that, even a greater energetic sense. And part of what the plants do for me is, if you go out in nature and sit under a tree and meditate for a while, you might have an insight or two about your life. But with the addition of a plant medicine, it just accelerates the journey. It thins that veil between yourself and the world of spirit. And that's what happens in a fuller dose. But the thing is, even in a microdosing sense, you're doing the same thing. For me, microdosing is a way to have like a little mini ceremony every single morning. It's very short, but you can bring the same level of intentionality, the same level and approach of what makes a successful ceremony experience. You can bring that into your life and have that impact your daily life in a very, very meaningful way. Um, and so, and sorry guys, I'm navigating this. It's so funny actually to me, this beam of light that's coming straight down. This usually doesn't happen. Pins like this is just my skylight here. That's not me doing anything on purpose here. And so it's just kind of interesting. I got this gold ray of light right through the camera here, but that's the way it is. So I'll just take that as a nice sign from spirit. But I'm talking about the three main things that both microdosing does as well as the plant medicine ceremony. To me, they're they're just linked. And they're so interrelated for me where I sit. And so let me just keep going here. So one, they thin the veil between ourselves and the world of spirit. Two is that they really accelerate your personal journey. And that's what microdosing does. There's a big caveat to that, that for me, someone really needs to be ready for it. They need to be ready to have their journey accelerated here. But if someone is ready, you know, say the insights or the lessons that may have come over the next 6 months, coming over the next 6 weeks, that's what I mean by accelerating the journey. They speed up the timeline on your journey of consciousness. And that's what these substances do. That's what these allies of consciousness do. The third thing that they do is they really allow for mythic soul level work to occur and to have access to that whatever word you want to use that points to the grandest level of our existence, the soul realm, the mythic, the energetic, the spiritual, whatever word that you want to point to that points to the grandest level of our existence, that's what they provide. You know, I heard some time ago that, you know, the shamans say it's about learning how to walk in the world with 1 foot in the realm of the sacred and 1 foot in the practical realm of what we need to do. And that sounds really nice, but try it. And so, you know, it's not 2 feet in the realm of the sacred when you're on a hike or when you're in temple or church or, you know, meditating, and then 2 feet in the realm of the practical come Monday morning. No, it's 1 foot in each realm as you go throughout your life, as you walk through life, as you have your interactions, as you approach your work, as you approach your children or your spouse, or, you know, anything that you're doing. How can you have 1 foot in the realm of the sacred, 1 foot in the realm of the practical? And what this does is microdosing and the plants allow you to do that to a greater degree for me. Okay, and so let me actually kind of get to like the actual nuts and bolts of the microdosing. And again, happy to answer any questions that you guys may have. There's a lot of information that I can convey around these things here. But let me give you guys kind of the nuts and bolts of like kind of what is like on a literal level, how do you actually do it? How do you actually microdose? Okay, so hang on 1 second here. And I'll say this too, excuse me. Pardon me. I have an 18-page PDF microdosing guide that I give away for free. And so let me just let you know where to get that. And so if you just contact me at john@johnlito.com. Again, I am John Jermaine Lito. And so, the website is just my name. And so, feel free, if you're interested and want that free microdosing guide, some of the information I'm giving today is in that guide, including the schedule that I recommend for people. So again, there are certain microdosing programs. Either way, it's still about taking a sub-perceptual dose of the medicine on a rather consistent basis, okay? Now, within that, what it's all about is you developing your relationship with the medicine in terms of, well, how much is enough? How often are you doing it? Again, I'm about to share with you some tendencies, and I can do that at the email address on the chat at the end. Yes, absolutely happy to do that, Carrie. But it's all about your relationship with the medicine. I have my relationship already with the medicine. and other people have theirs. And so part of what it's all about is just developing your relationship with the medicine. And so that's why for me, I like to approach these things with a certain level of precision, if you will. And so my typical program, as I mentioned, is 4 days on. So you're microdosing 4 days in a row um, at a sliding dosage scale. And so that's why you want to get an actual scale. I've got mine right in front of me here. It's literally a little scale. You can get this on Amazon for like 25 bucks, 20 bucks, and you set it to grams. Make sure it's set to grams and not something else, so that you're measuring exactly what you need. And then you can measure out to the thousandths of a decimal point what you're doing. I like to begin at literally half of what Paul Stamets used to recommend with his microdosing protocol. Paul Stamets, if you're not familiar with him, there's a couple of resources. Let me just say right off the bat, if you haven't seen, highly recommend. I usually never say, hey, you've got to watch this movie. But if you have not seen the documentary, Fantastic Fungi, I cannot recommend it strongly enough. It is very well done. It is a wonderful documentary on the fungi, on mushrooms, on what they really do. It's only about an hour and 20 minutes long. It is one of only 5 films to ever get a 100% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. That's how well done this thing is. And pretty much guarantee, I don't make many guarantees, but check this documentary out and I guarantee you'll walk away saying, wow, I'm glad I spent the time watching this. This has impacted me and opened a doorway in a way that was not open before. And so highly recommend that documentary. Paul does mention, I got a couple sentences about microdosing in it, but you want to understand the properties. So for me, I'll just say my biggest takeaway, even for me, even though I've been not dabbling in these areas, really pursuing these areas for over a decade, and yet it deepened things for me. And so for me, if you think about it, what mushrooms do, what fungus do, what the entire kingdom does, is they decompose the old and allow for rebirth. That's what the mushrooms do. That's their purpose. That's their role. You know, if we didn't have the mushroom kingdom on Earth, we'd have piles of trash everywhere, all over the place. We'd have piles of trash all over the place. And yet what the mushrooms do is they come in and they basically encourage rebirth. They let the old things die. That mouse dies in the forest and the mushrooms come and help decompose it, go back down to the earth. No more mouse eat. And then right where it was, all of a sudden new green growth just starts sprouting up. You know, it's, I'll share a quick story. Not too long ago, I had an intention for a ceremony. And every now and then I really get some hard lessons around things. And the intention, I was actually just feeling, you know what, all I need right now, I don't want some big giant journey. I don't want to do something hard. I want something easy. I just need some restoration. You know, some replenishment, some gentle nurturing. And so literally my intention that I had spoken was restoration. And then an hour and a half goes by. And then finally the mushrooms were telling me, John, we don't do that. It's the reason why you try to give yourself an easy intention, and yet think about the word restoration. Restoration is taking something old and making it new again. Basically what they're saying is, this is the one thing we do not do. If there's one thing that we don't do, we don't take something old and make it new again. We take something old and we encourage it to die and go away so that something new can be reborn. It's literally the opposite of restoration. And yet the words that we use, the intentions that we use matter. And so it's like, okay, now that I got, okay, what I meant was I needed gentle nurturing. I'm like, yeah, but that's not what you said. You said restoration. And that's like, we're trying to do that. And we're actually trying to do something that like we're not built to do. And so it was quite an interesting lesson. I had to laugh my butt off in the middle of it afterwards when I realized what I was doing there. But that's how precise for me these medicine experiences can be. And so, I'm on a little bit of a tangent here, but this fantastic fungi movie, cannot highly recommend it enough. The other thing is How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan, is a very cerebral approach to these medicines. And Michael Pollan, being an experienced journalist, and I love the fact that he's not some woo-woo guy. He's very, very practical. It's a very cerebral approach to his experience with 4 medicines. And although I will say this, and I haven't met Michael yet, and I look forward to the day when I'm able to. But what's interesting about his experience, if I can say this, is I feel like with each of the ceremonies, at least the ones he documents in his book, it feels like he never really had a very strong intention for any of his medicine experiences. And so for me, intention is one of those areas I could talk for hours just about intention setting. And the reason this applies is because every time you're taking a microdose in the morning, well, you're not doing it mindlessly. That's the last thing you want to do. You're not just, we're not just feathers blowing in the wind here. Yes, it is about a surrendered first approach to life, a letting go and allowing. And yet, even though it's the allowing first, then it's like, okay, what is it that you are seeking? What would you like to cultivate through your life? And whether it's a greater sense of self-love, a greater sense of being of service, a greater sense of creativity, of prosperity, of ease, of fulfillment. One of the giant realizations over the last couple of years is that not only can you direct the microdose, you need to direct the microdose from where I sit. Because the mushrooms don't care. They don't care. They're just happy to be in a human body, happy to just like spread out within you. So they don't really care. And so for me, the mushroom is rather spiritually neutral, if you will. It's not feminine, it's not masculine. If you think about it, it's rather balanced, like stem, cap, rather balanced, if you will. And so what they do is they amplify the existing state. That's what they do. And so that's why the typical cliche of minding your set and setting, your mindset as well as your setting, where are you? And that's pretty good advice. Good advice, actually, to mind that for your microdosing amount as well as any proper ceremony experience. But for me, I like to take it a step further, which is what's the entire energetic container that is holding that experience? Not just about having a picture of a Buddha on the wall. I have plenty of those. It's about what is the energy that's housing that particular experience, and to be mindful of that even as you're taking the microdosing. Okay. So those 2 resources, How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan, the book, and Fantastic Fungi, the documentary, 2 things I highly recommend. But let me get back to the microdosing protocol here. Okay. One of the benefits and also the drawbacks of flying by the seat of my pants is just kind of rolling with you guys, giving you guys different information, but I will come back, I do promise that. So it's 4 days on, 3 days off at a sliding dosage schedule. My typical recommendation is increments of 0.05 grams. So day 1, you would measure it out 0.05. Day 2, 0.1, then 0.15, then 0.2 over 4 days. And then what you're doing is you're documenting your journey. And it need not be some really in-depth thing. Just the next morning before you take the microdose, just note, okay, what were the differences in my day? What did I notice as a result of having this minuscule amount of medicine in me? What were the key moments throughout the day? Maybe you had something happened at work you were super unbothered by, where usually would really get under your skin. Or maybe you had some interaction where you just pulled an idea out of thin air and like, oh, that was interesting. So because the whole point, again, is you're developing your relationship with the medicine, but how do you do that if you're not clearly documenting it? We're talking about very, very fine margins when it comes to microdosing. Very, very fine margins. We're talking about this amount of medicine versus that amount of medicine. It's so tiny that if you don't note the differences, a week will go by and you're like, it'll just be one mixed mash of stuff that happened that week that overall will probably be pretty positive and beneficial, but you won't understand how does your body and your being and your mind and your heart react to 0.15 versus 0.05. What's the difference for you? The whole point in doing this is you want to find your sweet spot. You want to understand how much medicine is necessary for you to experience the benefits of why you're microdosing to begin with, okay? Meaning, like why you're doing this, and having enough medicine, but not so much that you're slightly ungrounded. And because again, the whole point is to not feel it. You're not feeling it. That's not the point of what you're doing. It's not about having any kind of journey or trip. It's not the conscious, again, it's the subconscious. You're microdosing not to affect your conscious mind, but your subconscious mind. It's the undercurrent that is literally holding the rest of the energy of your day. You're influencing things on that level. And that's what microdosing does. That's the opportunity of it to actually influence things on that level. And then after you have, say, a week of that, okay, then you can look and say, okay, well, how was my journey? What do I need to do? Actually, it felt like, I'm just giving an example. I've really had like my best day when I was like at, 0.15 maybe. Okay, and then maybe like looking at that, and then you kind of like dial it in. Maybe this week I'll just do 0.1, 0.15, 0.17, and see how I do with those. And then you can kind of dial in that exact dose. Now, every single time you work with a new batch of medicine, you have to do this whole process all over again. The reason why is because there are so many different strains of medicine, so many different strains of psilocybin, so many different variables in the medicine that give you the ultimate end result of that medicine. And you want to know this. You want to know this for any kind of proper full ceremony, as well as like wherever you're getting your medicine, how many hands did it pass through? Every single person that touches that is kind of imprinting a little bit of their energy on that medicine. So you want to know how to maybe clear your medicine first, maybe taking it and running it through some sage or Palo Santo, some of that smoke to kind of clear off any residue of anybody else. You don't want anybody else's energy going into merging your consciousness with it. And so for me, it's about the highest and purest source, kind of like anything else you'd buy. And so if you got an apple growing from your tree outside, that apple's gonna taste better than something you bought at the store. And so it's like the shortest distance to you, the less hands it has to go through, the less rigmarole it has to go through, the better. And so, and again, all of that is on you. I don't talk at all about that. I don't share anything. Again, I don't provide any of these substances for people. I don't need to. Mother Earth does that. And so, yeah. And so, so that's a little bit of the microdosing protocol and a little bit of like noting the differerences on the days to dial in the dose, and then see how that works for you. For me, there's so much going on in this area right now, and certain people have certain microdosing formulas I've seen, even like a nasal spray with microdosing in it. But the thing about that, for me, where I sit, is how do you know what you're doing? If there's 0.165 in a capsule, how do you know that's what you need? And that's great. You can take that capsule with other actogenic herbs and like cordyceps and lion's mane and a few other things that really support the actual psilocybin in there. But how do you know you need that? And so that's my only thing, is that I feel like that can be really convenient and useful and easy once you have a relationship with the medicine. But for me, when someone's actually beginning, measure it out, understand what you're doing, because 0.15 of one batch of medicine handled one way could be a completely different experience of another batch of medicine. Also, word to the wise, there's technically more psilocybin in the cap than the stem, and so you want to you want to cut it up. You don't have to like put it in a coffee grinder and be really vicious with it. Just kind of cut it up so that you have a blend of both the cap and the stem. You want one uniform amount if you're going to be doing that and taking the microdose in that way. Let me see here. Any questions, comments, thoughts on what I've said so far? I have a lot more information I can convey here, but any comments, thoughts, questions on anything that I've said so far, feel free to just go ahead and type those in to the chat box there. So, um, so let me see here. Um, so let me actually cover a couple of things here about like a little bit more about the microdosing experience and um, and like kind of the five elements that really comprise like a microdosing program as well as a full ceremony. Okay, and I mentioned a couple of these. We'll go into a few of these to kind of deepen this for you guys. So for me, there's really five primary elements of any medicine experience, and whether that's in a microdosing setting. And again, most of the information here today is based on that psilocybin mushroom, but you can microdose cannabis, you can microdose San Pedro, you can microdose any psychoactive plant. You can, if you want to keep that vibration, that same teacher, if you will, present in your life. Um, and I'll say this too, because sometimes people go down to Peru, they'll have their ayahuasca experience. It's sometimes kind of hard to find ayahuasca or to procure that yourself. Um, and so you can actually use the sacred mushroom and microdose with mushrooms an insight or an experience with a different plant medicine. So you can microdose using mushrooms. You don't have to microdose with ayahuasca. It's actually, to me, the way that the mushrooms work. If you think about like the connective properties of the mushrooms, the mycelium network that connects so much of the planet here. So I was saying before, if they can decompose the old and help the new rebirth, that's what they can do for Mama Earth. What can they do for our own brains? What can they do for our mind in terms of having us, let go of the old thought patterns, the old associations, the old energetic imprints that don't serve? All the stuff we just were like, I do not want to perpetuate this. We all have situations in our lives that have been challenging, that have caused us some harm. How do we learn from that, not repeat that, and move towards the new that we'd like to move in our lives? And that's what these plants can allow for. That's why I say they are tools for the journey of consciousness. For me, there's so many different ways to approach the plant medicine experience. And again, there's a certain way of approaching things. For some people, they like to go down to Peru. They'll sit in a 15 or 20 person ayahuasca ceremony, where there's not much integration afterwards. You come back into the States, you're like, whoa, what was that? That's not what I recommend. Those are not the kind of things I get involved with. I used to facilitate 20 to 25 person San Pedro ceremonies down in Peru or Costa Rica or other places. And yet I feel like, so much of the medicine experiences for me are too focused on the medicine. For some people, it's all about ayahuasca, or all about San Pedro. It's all about 5-MeO DMT. That's boom, straight shot. No, not for me. What it's actually about. It's never, for me, from where I sit, it's never about the trip or about the journey. It's not about the experience when you're having that 3 to 5 hour experience or whatever it may be. For me, it's about the catalyst that the trip or the journey can be for your life and your soul's journey moving forward. For me, I'm all about, maybe it's because half of me again is the shaman, the other half is the coach. It's about the application of the plant medicine experience. How do we apply these things? For me, life is a series of exploration and then implementation phases. And that's the thing. Look, I'm down here in Southern California, okay, outside of San Diego. And look, you can, bum around Encinitas and you can see people where they're just like, they're dizzy because they keep layering one experience on top of another experience on top of another experience. And they're, finding yet another, ceremony or something again this weekend, where they really haven't properly integrated. They haven't properly walked with and applied the lessons from these other experiences. And after a while, people are just like dizzy and so blown out. And to me, that's not the point. I mean, of course, whatever floats somebody's boat. And again, I have no judgment around it. It just, for me, the shamans say it takes 3 moons to integrate a new insight or lesson fully into your life. 3 moons, meaning 3 months, in between ceremony experiences. And so again, I leave that up to people's own discernment around, what is right for you, what is best for you. Only you know that. Again, I never tell anyone what the correct way is. You've got to honor your own discernment around what is best. And yet, sometimes these recommendations, to heed them can be really valuable here. But for me, again, and I don't want to be too judgmental, but the way that most people approach medicine conversations, they're in very, very loose containers, not much intention setting, or it's like very loose intentions, and they want to get 5 things out of a ceremony. That's not the way that I like to approach things. For me, it's about approaching it with a very strong singular intention, meaning one. How can you frame what you're doing from both a plant medicine, like full sense, as well as in your microdosing when you're taking it. You're not presencing 12 different things as you're doing it. It's too much. We can't actually hold 12 different insights at one time. And so it's like, have that drishti, that point of focus for what you're doing with your microdosing. For me, that's the way to do it, to be really intentional around that. And when you're microdosing, for me, it's about really the strong felt sense of what you're moving towards. Again, not only can you direct it, but you need to direct it. And the way that you direct it is, once you take that little bit, then for me, I put my hands on the heart, and you presence that new. Maybe it was the way you felt on that hike, or in Shavasana that day, or that key insight from that last plant medicine ceremony, or that sound bath, whatever it was, like really energetically presencing it, emotionally presencing it. Hold that for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, then you're good. That is the actual way to actually take it with intention. That's what I always recommend here. Okay. Of course, any other questions, guys, feel free to just go ahead and jot them down here. I'm going to go ahead and just refer to a couple of notes just to make sure I'm not, there's so many different things I can say about this here. One of the things that I like to explore here is, if you really think about it, and again, for you and your own experience here, it's like, if you think about for yourself, and the actual experiences that you've had, sometimes you're able to move towards that new, and sometimes you don't. Just because you get a glimpse of something, on a hike or in a meditation, usually doesn't mean that you've moved fully towards it. It's like you get a glimpse of something maybe in a ceremony, but it's a little foggy. You don't get like the fully produced thing. Often what I say after any medicine experiences, what you were really given were seeds. There were seeds, if you will, in your etheric garden. And now it's up to you to care for those seeds, to water those seeds, to make sure they're getting attention, to make sure there's not any kind of energetic weeds that are going to be growing that could kind of stunt their own growth there. And so part of what microdosing is for me is it's really a tool for integration. Hope I'm not beating too much of a dead horse with this and saying the same thing 8 different ways here, but that's really what it is. It's a tool for integrating the main primary insights after a potent experience. That can either be, again, a plant medicine experience or anything on the journey of consciousness here. Okay. The reason why, and I haven't covered this yet, let me cover this with you, is that what you're really doing when you're microdosing is, for me, you're running a small electrical current over the new neural pathway. And that's why your subperceptual needs to be subperceptual, why your micro needs to be micro and really tiny, is because if you're actually feeling your microdose, if you're feeling it, if it's no longer just subperceptual, then what you're doing is not only running an electrical current over the new neural pathway, the neurogenesis that has just occurred, but you're now trying to branch into new territory. But it's not the time to. You're not in proper ceremony at that time. You're probably driving or something. It's like 9 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. Not the time to be forming new neural networks. Save that for when you can really dive deep and go into the exploration of it. That's why your micro needs to be micro. You're just running a small electrical current over the new neural pathway to reinforce that new pathway, the new that you're moving towards in life. And so that's the thing that I would highly recommend. Again, the thing is like I was saying before, people are getting and experiencing immense benefits with plant medicine experiences, with microdosing, even if they don't know anything. If they're just taking a little pinch or just taking some nasal spray or taking some, just some capsule with however much is in there, whatever, and they're just doing it and they're going about their day, even if they're not taking it in a completely intentional way. And that's the things that these things really do have immense benefit. They have their own intelligence that can assist. But for me, a little bit of information goes a very long way in this area. And so if you can bring a little bit more intentionality, a little bit more precision to your overall process of doing this, usually can go a very long way. So any thoughts, any comments, any questions, anything else, anything about anything I'm saying here that any questions around the microdosing protocol, any questions around enhancing your relationship with your internal world? It does beg the question, well, what is your relationship then with your internal world? Because if it's a tool for enhancing that relationship, what is that? And where are you there in that relationship? And so wherever you are, this can be a powerful tool if you're feeling it. Okay, so let me see here. About 45 minutes in right now, and again, happy to go in whatever direction you guys would like. I'm just going to refer to a couple of other notes here. Let me see. Yep. I'll say this too. This is something that came through a little bit earlier. In thinking about where someone is, after a potent experience, after somebody's had a wonderful sound bath, or you've been to yoga and it's been really illuminating, or you've just been on a sacred trip somewhere, and or you've had a full plant medicine experience. What I feel after that is you're kind of like a 5, like a number 5, if you will. Like you're kind of halfway there. And you can either go back to where you were before that experience, you go back to 0 where you were, or you can move forward. You can move forward with what you're doing into like a 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 is like fully embracing the new, fully embodying that new in your life. That insight, it is like, it's here. It is like down in your body. And you've fully integrated that insight and that lesson. And so, and yet, it's like, what's going to make the difference there? What's going to make the difference? Like, I feel like after an experience, you're like at a 5. But hey, you might have a busy week ahead of you now. And there may not be much space to really to integrate that new. And so that's why for me, after any experience, what is mostly needed is simply that space. And so, I feel like, and this is why, I've been both a student and teacher of meditation for over 25 years, is because everything that you do in your own stillness and meditation practices, your own relationship to both the yin and yang energy within yourself, what you're bringing that to your journey. And, it's an interesting thing for me because, in any full-blown like medicine experience, it's all about all yin. There's no yang whatsoever in that kind of experience, if you think about it. It's all about like, let me just surrender, let me fully allow, let me not, I'm not ever saying, no, that doesn't work for me, or I'm going to go this way now. That's yang. That's you saying something, doing something, saying no. You don't do that in a full medicine experience. It's all about fully surrendering, fully allowing the experience, fully being totally receptive no matter what you're shown in the experience. That's full yin. And yet in life, it's about the balance. It's about the balance in meeting any given moment and what is the appropriate amount of yin versus yang energy for that particular moment. I say this because it's like, okay, if you're, in traffic and there's clearly a different way around that could save you a half an hour to get to where you want to go, you're supposed to just sit in the traffic and just accept it. I'll just be yin and I'll just fully surrender to this traffic when there's clearly a different way, or there's a pebble in your shoe. Okay, am I being asked now, Spirit, I've got to like walk around with this pebble in my shoe all day long and every single step it like digs into my foot? No, you take the pebble out. It's a very yang thing to do, say, no, that doesn't work for me. Okay, and so silly examples maybe, but the whole point here is that in life it's about the balance of the yin and the yang. In ceremony, or when you're taking the microdose, it's like, okay, letting go. What do you have for me first? Surrender first, and then have an intention for why you're taking it, and then simply then you meet the moment. And for me, that is the same approach, and it's why I have so much just sort of natural passion about these things, is I've never seen people in over 20 years of working in personal development here, I've never seen the results, the kinds of results, the kinds of rapid results and rapid transformation that I've seen with like proper coaching and setup, ceremony experience, and then the integration of those experiences with microdosing. It's pretty amazing what I have seen with this particular approach and this formula. And yet, to each one of these, it's still this, and this is a way oversimplification, but it really is 3 steps. I've mentioned them. I'm just going to repeat them really quickly, because the same approach that provides for a successful, productive, and efficient ceremony experience is the exact same approach to a successful microdosing program. And again, it's the exact same approach to how to have a successful everyday life. And I'll dare say, probably not the approach that most people in Western society take, okay? And it's these 3 steps. It's number 1, surrender first. Surrender first. So before there's something, there's nothing. And to be in that nothing, to be in that full yin, before there's the dot on the piece of paper, and the one dot is the yang, the something. First, there's the blank canvas. And so it's just really allowing for that blank canvas, breathing in just the void energy in surrender, non-doing, simply being, and making space for that. And the typical meditation cliche is to mind the gap, right? Mind the gap in between the thoughts. And so oftentimes it's just, for so many people, it's just thought, one after the next. One judgment, one evaluation after the next. How is Spirit supposed to get a word in when we're constantly talking to ourselves and thinking so much? And so for me, the first step is detaching from that, being the observer of our thoughts, not needing to judge, not needing to explain, not needing to understand anything that begins with the word how. How is a mental question. It denotes mental activity. It denotes a mental process to something. And yet for me, you either take a surrendered breath or you do not. There is no process. There is no 1, 2, 3 of it. You just surrender first. And so a lot of times I spend with people, John, how do I surrender? And I would get that question sometimes. And then what I usually tell people is that, well, first thing you have to do is stop asking questions that begin with the word how. And then they look at me, what? Huh? Let me think about that for a second. Yeah, think about it. Okay? Because it's about residing in a different place, residing in the non-linear aspects of yourself, not the linear aspects. But back to the 3 steps. So it's surrender first. And again, this is for microdosing. your everyday life or even in a full ceremony experience here. Surrender first, then number two, have an intention. Again, we're not just feathers blowing in the wind. We have this thing called intention. Earlier in life, people, I used to call it a goal, if you will, but I kind of got goaled out much earlier in life with all the Western success thought much earlier in my life. And so I'm not a fan of the word goal or objective or things of that nature because it's almost just too young for me. It's too, when you have a goal, now you're like attached to that result somehow. Usually you can be very attached to it. You either meet the goal or you don't meet the goal. There's no leeway, there's no room in that. And so for me, the word intention, you can have an intention and then you can let go. It's not about being like hell-bent on like forcing an outcome. You can take a more surrendered, intentioned approach to things. And so, we've covered that, how to actually be intentional as you're taking your microdose, if you will. And then, quite simply, again, it's an oversimplification, but then you meet the moment. That's number three. You meet the moment. What does this moment call for? And how can you have your own discernment? Again, discernment being defined as the ability to know truth from untruth. So in that moment, what is the exact percentage of yin versus yang energy that is required to, navigate that parenting situation with one of your children, or navigating that exact, work situation with someone, or with a potential, with a client or something. What is the approach? You meet your moments in life. What is that? And so, hopefully, the things that I've covered here today, in both a microdosing sense, the power of the plants, the allies of consciousness that they really can be, and that's one of the things too, is that, look, in this time we could all use from time to time a little bit more support. These are times of immense change and disruption, and so, if you don't know how to surrender, you're going to have a real tough time right now. And there's some people having an extremely tough time. And so much is going on within, people's relationships and their relationship to work. And so much is being looked at, more so probably right now than ever before. It's interesting. I mean, I was living in New York when 9/11 happened. And I remember at that time, the catalyst that was at that time, 19 years ago now, I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today had that event not happened. It certainly accelerated things because it made me look at myself, my life, my journey in a different way. And so right now, so much is going on for people to look at themselves, their lives, their journeys. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Why am I living where I'm living, spending time with the people I'm spending time with? Why am I spending my time working on what I'm working on? What is meaningful to me? What is that? And so both microdosing and the plants can assist, can be supportive on that journey. And so I pray that you have the support that you require for your journey. And again, only you know what that is. And so thank you. Thank you for joining me here. Thank you for your attention, your presence. Any final questions? I'll go ahead. Someone's asking me, Carrie was like, can you add the email address into the chat at the end? What's typically the end in just 2 minutes here. So yeah, again, to get my microdosing guide, or if you have other questions on microdosing or plant medicine experiences in Costa Rica or in Peru, I am talking with Justin at OC Yoga Fest about, we was actually supposed to have our first plant medicine retreat. There was a combination of yoga and plant medicine down in Costa Rica in May. Because of COVID-19, we had to postpone that. But I believe for 2021, we're talking about doing some very exciting things. And so if this has piqued some curiosity for you around either microdosing or fuller plant medicine experiences down in Costa Rica, come on down and join us. We're looking forward to some really beautiful, really powerful retreats down there with the plants. And so, I didn't put that. There we go. Everyone in the meeting. Oops. I put that for everyone. Oh, that was just privately. So here you go. Sorry, guys. Can you micro any strain? Well, thank you, Summer, for the question. The answer is yes, you can. However, there are certain strains that are not, I don't recommend working with because of their, for lack of a better word, their kapow tendencies. So again, you got different strains of mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms, that kind of work in different ways. And so there are certain strains that are they're really big and really stretchy and really fleshy. There's literally a strain called penis envy, and like I wouldn't microdose that. That's just not right. That's not it. But there are others like the Cubensis B Plus or Golden Teachers, things in those strains that are much more apt for me to support in a microdosing sense. And so thank you so much for that question. I'm, of course, happy to answer any other questions you guys have. Her side doors, the only question of. Yeah, so again, I don't get involved in any sense in pointing to people about where to procure the medicine from. That's really on you guys, and if you can understand the position I'm in, I can't make any recommendations, and I don't. So I didn't even, I don't even know Zydor. I don't even know what that is. And so I would be hesitant about buying it online. But again, I was mentioning earlier, however you procure your mushrooms, there's a way of cleansing them and getting off any residue, any energetic residue of anything they may have picked up before they got to you. And so I do recommend doing that before you actually consume them. And so hopefully this is okay. It's just john@johnlito.com. And again, the website is John Germain Lito. And so any questions or to get into a microdosing guide, feel free to email me with any questions or to get the free microdosing guide that I have. So once again, thank you so much to OC Yoga Fest. Thank you to all the sponsors of OC Yoga Fest. Thank you so much for having me here again. Blessings, you guys, for all that's to come for each of you. Be well.